Well, hey, GCC youth. So here we are, week 2 of not being able to meet together. But you know what? I'm thankful for social media and the internet. I know it's not ideal, but I'm glad we can still meet in this way and we're not completely shut off. So this is the latest session and the last session of the dating series, Save the Date. And I hope you've been able to take some wisdom from these messages and apply them to your own life. If you've missed any of our previous messages, you can find them on the GCC Youth Podcast on any of your favorite platforms. So back in ancient times, like say 20 years ago, if you wanted to know more about a person, you had to actually talk to them. You had to observe them up close to learn what they were like. You had to be around them to know what they were into. Today, it's much simpler to get basic intel on someone. You just stalk them online, right? Sounds creepy in theory, but we've all done this, right? We've all seen someone we didn't know but wanted to know and then track them down online to do some basic recon work. Because chances are, if someone is into something, their info is going to be out there somewhere. And even though some people still don't understand this idea, we can learn a ton about people by looking at their online posts. We'll probably learn their favorite foods, right? Because everybody wants everyone else to know what's on their plate, so they snap a photo and post it. When we look at other people's posts, we can learn what they're interested in. If you want to know what somebody's into, you can usually find it with a quick search. We can also learn about their relationships. Maybe you have 1 million photos on your grid. Maybe it's just 2, but you're probably showing up on someone's grid or story or feed. It's pretty easy to find out who you hang out with. Now, I don't bring this up to try and creep you out. I'm just saying most of us have most of our business out there for people to see. And even if we aren't the ones talking about it or posting it, we've made it clear that we're okay with our likes and our dislikes being a public kind of thing. But with one exception. Who you like or want to date is rarely something you want to go public, right? I mean, even if every other thing we like or dislike can be public, when it comes to who we like and want to date, that's usually something we don't exactly want to broadcast. The same is kind of true for those of us who are already dating somebody. I mean, you probably wouldn't mind if people knew you were dating. In fact, your grid may be full of pictures of you two together. But those are just pics. When it comes to the relationship you have, the conversations you have, the inside jokes you have, there's a good chance that a piece of your relationship, maybe most of your relationship, is something you'd rather keep just between you guys. And I'm not saying that it's always a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a real thing to want to keep your dating life low key. So there are probably a lot of reasons why we keep these relationships low key, but here are a few. The first reason is this. It might be an area where we feel uncomfortable sharing. Maybe it's embarrassing to put yourself out there like that, or maybe you can't put it out there that you're hanging out with someone because you're not sure what you would say if anybody asked about it. Another reason might be this is an area where we tend to dislike input. Maybe when you first met this person, you wanted to debrief everything with your friends and get feedback, but now that you've been in the relationship for a while, you feel like you've got it handled. No more input needed, which leads me to reason 3. We're afraid that the people closest to us might disapprove of the relationship. Maybe your crush doesn't have the best reputation, but when they're with you, they're different. And so you think your friends probably won't understand that. So it's a lot easier to just keep the whole thing to yourself. And speaking of disapproval, another big reason we may keep our dating status to ourselves is reason 4. We're afraid our parents might disapprove. In fact, for some of you, there's a 100% chance that no matter who the girl or guy is, and no matter how amazing and perfect they are, your parents will disapprove. And because your parents are never shy about critiquing your choices, if they knew who you were dating, you'd never hear the end of it. So it's a lot easier and quieter to just keep it to yourself. Plus, your parents experienced dating a long time ago, so it feels like they can't really understand what you're going through now. All of our pushback to letting people into this area of our lives makes sense because, let's be honest, there are some really good reasons for not making every moment of your life, especially your dating life, public knowledge. At the same time, you're smart. And you can probably see how this nobody knows approach can backfire and lead to minor or major relationship disasters. We've been calling this series Save the Date, and this is the last one in the series. And the whole point has been to save our dating lives from things that could make them less great or less good for us. And that's exactly what we're talking about again this week through the wise words of a guy named Solomon. Tonight I want to take another look at the book of Proverbs, which is a big collection of wise insights on just about every topic you can imagine. The main author of Proverbs is a man named Solomon, an ancient king who led God's people. And the Bible tells us that he was the wisest man who ever lived. So if this guy had something to say, it probably won't hurt for us to listen. Proverbs 11:14 says, "For lack of guidance a nation falls, but victory is won through many advisors." This is not everyday language. I'm assuming the only advisor you know is your school's guidance counselor, or academic advisor maybe. But even though the language sounds different than what you hear in everyday life, the message is the same and still relevant to every human. Here's what Solomon is saying. If a nation doesn't have enough advisors giving advice, it falls apart. And the same is true in the rest of our lives. If we only rely on ourselves for guidance and direction in different areas of our life, at some point we're going to fall. If we turned off the lights in this room, but I had a flashlight, that would be better than being completely in the dark, right? But even with a flashlight, as I look around, I wouldn't be able to see very far and not very much at one time. I could only see a few feet in front of me, and that would only be wherever my flashlight was pointed. And if I wanted to walk around, I could kind of make out what's around me, but it wouldn't be very distinct and it wouldn't be very obvious. I wouldn't be able to see the whole picture, but just part of what's out there. But if I use more than one light, like if more people had flashlights, things would be much clearer and more distinct. I mean, you still wouldn't be able to see everything, but you could see a lot more than you could with one flashlight from one angle. Life is the same way. When we only use our perspective, the things are limited. There's only so much we can see. We don't recognize the whole picture, and as a result, we can easily trip up and make mistakes. And the thing to remember is this. We don't get tripped up because we're trying to make a mistake. We don't make it a goal to stumble. It happens because we're relying solely on our own reasoning, our own perspective and experience, because we've kept people in the dark. And that's exactly what Solomon is saying. When we live life and make decisions on our own, it's like we're using our own flashlight to navigate the way forward. We only have our experience, our intelligence, and our understanding, but those things only go so far. In nearly every area of our life, we make better decisions, we get less tripped up, and we have an easier time of things if we invite someone else in to shine a light and help us see what we couldn't see before. That's especially true of our dating lives. If we rely only on what we think and what we see in a dating situation, we're going to miss the big picture. We won't see what's going on around us, which can lead us to some poor decisions, not so great judgment calls, and ultimately some regrets. But if we're willing to invite someone else in and share with them what's really going on and invite them to shine a light on the dating part of our lives, we'll have a much clearer view of what we're doing and where we're going. So what I'm saying is this: don't date in the dark. Don't date in the dark. Look, I get it. You're a smart person. You have a general handle on things probably, but there's no way you can know everything. No one can. You can't see any situation from every angle, and that includes your dating life. You only know what you know. In other words, you only know what you've personally experienced for yourself, and you've only experienced what's happened in your own life, in your own family, childhood, and school. And that's awesome because all those experiences make you who you are. But there are people around you who have experienced life and relationships in a very different way, and those people can be so helpful to you whether you're dating now or plan to date in the future. Solomon knew this, and that's why he's suggested having many advisors as a nation and as a person. It can save a lot of parts of your life from hurt and regret, especially your dating life. But how do you find many advisors in life? That sounds like a weird thing to do, right? Well, when it comes to your dating life, let's just pick one or two. Here are a few thoughts to get started. The first way to find an advisor is this. Think of someone who could be objective. We all have those friends who will always agree with our decisions, no matter who we decide to date. But we don't want someone who will just tell us what we want to hear. An advisor isn't one of those people. We need people who are willing to be honest with us, even when they think we might disagree, especially when we might disagree. We all need voices who will be real with us when necessary. Here's another way to find an advisor in your life. Find someone older than you. Okay, let's just be honest about something. Being older doesn't make someone smarter. We all know that. But wisdom is different than just being smart. Wisdom comes from experience. Sure, you can get advice from people who have the same amount of wisdom as you. Maybe they're 14, 15, or 17 years old. Or you can have 20 or 30 or 40 years worth of wisdom because you asked someone who is older. And chances are, one of these candidates is within reach for you. One of the other youth leaders here, perhaps, or another adult in our church. Here's another way to find an advisor. Reach out. This is the biggest step. Even though we know what we might need, taking the action to make it happen is hard. It may sound scary, but I'd be willing to bet that any leader here would be more than happy to simply have a conversation with you. And they're not going to put you on blast and tell all your friends or make you feel weird about it. And a conversation or two will help you identify if this is someone who could give you honest, objective feedback on what you're experiencing in your dating life and in life in general. To the majority of us who are not currently dating someone, I know you may be thinking, well, none of this applies to me. I'm not dating anyone. I have zero possibilities on the horizon. But even if you're not dating anyone, chances are you will one day, which means you can get a head start today by finding the kind of people you can count on to give you advice and wisdom for future relationships. You will never regret having a lot of advisors. So start finding them now, because you will never know when you will need them later. Living in the dark is never a good idea, but dating in the dark is a very bad idea, because who you date and how you navigate those relationships will impact other areas as well. The quality of your high school years, and probably several years after, can be affected by how you handle your dating life right now. So right now, begin to think of someone who could possibly be a candidate for an advisor. Call them a friend, but qualify them by one of the ways we talked about earlier. Think of someone who can give you honest advice on everything, but especially dating. Reach out to them, let them listen to you, and then listen to what they have to say in return. Dating is better when you don't date in the dark. Listen, I love you guys, and I hope that you're being creative with this time as we're in the middle of this unfamiliar territory and while we're having to limit our social interaction. One of the best ways to do that is to focus on you. We've talked about that before. So grab your Bible each day, open the Bible app on your phone, however you choose, and then draw on the words of God for your daily life. Those are the words that will help you the most, not just during this COVID-19 deal, but in every day of your life from here on. And stay tuned in to the GCC Youth Instagram page for more stuff that's coming. I'll see you again soon.